Group South Ukraine, squeezed into territory south of a huge Russian salient, now risked complete severance from the rest of the German armies to the north, and of being isolated, together with the remaining garrisons in the Balkans, from their homeland. Hitler delayed in ordering a withdrawal until it was almost too late. The results of the collapse of the Romanians and Bulgarians were calamitous for the Germans. Bitter street fighting ensued. By the end of January 1945, the garrison's food supplies were exhausted. After dark on the 11th of February, be escapers, only a few hundred made it. On the 13th of February, the Russians took the surrender of over 30,000 haggard survivors. Army Group South had ceased to exist. Their southeastern front was disintegrating. The vital oil supplies essential to the Nazi war effort had been irretrievably lost. Meanwhile, the Russians closed in on Budapest, defended vigorously by General Freisner, and what was left of the once formidable Army Group South. The German army groups E and F, deployed in Greece and Yugoslavia, now risked being cut off from home as the Russians headed into Hungary and towards the glittering prize of Budapest. Both had to run the gauntlet if they were to make it back to Germany. Their painful march to temporary safety was harried all the way through Greece, Albania and Yugoslavia. It heavily reinforced the Hungarian front. Army Group South, though battered, still had plenty of fight left and counterattacked against Malinovsky's Second Ukrainian Front as it started its attack on Budapest in mid-October 1944. The Russians were temporarily halted, and when their attack resumed at the end of the month, they found themselves confronted by 12 German divisions. Although the spring thaw was setting in, little or no attempt was made to test the going for the tanks, and in the swampy plain, the 60-ton Royal Tigers bogged down, many to their turrets once off the roads. But the SS fighting spirit was still evident, and Dietrich's was an elite formation, however ravaged by casualties. The Russians reeled before the ferocity of the German attack, until Buchin called for backup from 9th Guards Tank Army. But the Germans' fuel ran out, and sheer battle fatigue brought the attack to a halt. Leaving hundreds of stalled tanks on the battlefield, 6th Army recoiled up the Danube Valley towards Vienna. The fall of Vienna in mid-April spelt the virtual end of the campaign that had swept through the Balkans. The German Army Group South had all but disintegrated, but Army Group Centre, under General Schörner, an unregenerate Nazi, was still in the field and holding out in Czechoslovakia as Berlin fell. It was thus the only sizable German force in being, and had to be dealt with. They were turned back and fell into the hands of the Red Army. Elsewhere in the Balkans, the Allies discovered that amongst the thousands of surrendered personnel in their hands were whole formations made up from renegade Cossacks, White Russians and Ukrainians, who'd been recruited into ethnic units of the German army to fight Bolshevism. In one of the most discreditable episodes of British diplomacy, and to the general disgust of the British officers and soldiers ordered to supervise the operation, these people, together with their families, were also handed over to the Russians, at whose hands they faced certain execution.